Hello and welcome to the Colour Cube Challenge. I'm just going to put these down. So yes, welcome to the Colour Cube Challenge. Now, this is something I started with the original set, because yes, I have that one too. And what I had noticed, despite having many gorgeous colour combos to choose from, 500 in the original set, I was still choosing my favourite ones. I was still leaning towards the colours that I always use, and I decided that the only way for me to get the best use out of this gorgeous product was to systematically go through them number 1 to 500. But now, since then, I didn't get very far into it, but since then, edition 2.0 has arrived. Lush, by the way. I did a review last week. But a new edition has arrived, which means I think we need to revive, revamp, restart the Colour Cube Challenge. So we're starting again from numero 1. I plan to go all the way to 1,000. We're not doing that today. Let's just manage expectations. I think this challenge is going to take me a good few years, but I think there's going to be lots of creativity and lots of learning to do along the way. I also know thousands and thousands of you have this little toy in your art studio, craft room, whatever creative thing that you do. So I would love it if you would join me. If you do, please feel free to tag me or use the hashtag Colour Cube Challenge. So without further ado, because we've got a lot to do, shall we just get started? So, Colour Cube Volume 1 Edition 2.0. Look at that gorgeous little divider card where we can see all the colours in this section. So this is Beautiful Landscape, and that is indeed a beautiful landscape, and also not too scary a colour combo to start this challenge off with. Feel okay. It's not like my absolute favourite, but I can live with blues and greens. I've pulled out my Pink Pig journal and my Kuretake Gansey Tambi paints, and I'm swatching. I have to say that one of the hardest things about this challenge is the constant swatching. However, the lovely Sarah Rennie Clark has also talked about a new thing coming called the Colour Companion, which sounds amazing. So basically it will be some sort of online subscription thing, and you can enter in all your different art supplies, all your different mediums, and it will have its own hex codes and names that will correspond then to all the cubes. And it means you could just sort of type in something and it will let you know what paint supplies match your card. How amazing would that be? I do know it's going to be on some sort of subscription service, so I'm just really hoping that when she does launch, it will be within my budget, because it sounds absolutely amazing. Also sounds like an amazing time saver, and I love things like that, because then at the end of the day means you can spend more time doing the exciting things. The pretty exciting things when it comes to crafting. So this particular page, I've just gone in nice and gently. I started off putting some watercolour paint through a stencil, and I'm just sort of layering lots of different stencil designs. I'm now working with acrylic markers and just building up a little design. Now what I have noticed, because I did start this challenge with the original edition, I must apologise for my head. I don't know, I was having such a lovely time creating this day that I seem to lose all spatial awareness, and despite my best efforts in the editing process, I've not been able to completely move my head away from the screen, so I apologise for the fact that you see my follicles just far too many times, quite frankly. Anyway, as I was saying, I find that these challenges not just push me with regards to colour combo, but also with regards to style. Yes, I could have pulled out some of my houses, because I seem to be quite obsessed with trees and forests at the minute, and that would have worked perfectly with this. But also I like building scenes, so I like sky colours and grass colours. I also like having characters and scenes, so I like having flesh tones. So sometimes when I don't get given those colours, I can't sort of fall back on my usual style, which means I have to try something different to fit the colours in, and that has really expanded my creativity. I do think that true creativity just lies just outside your comfort zone, and that's why I do like things like prompt books. I did Peachtober this year. Just trying different things so that you grow as a creative is such a good practice. So with this page, a bit more white doodleage on top of the layers, and that one is all done. So we have done page number 1 of 1000, only 999 to go. We'll not think about that one too much. We'll just move quietly on to number 2, take our time and enjoy the process. So for this one, I pulled out my Amala journal. This journal's so lush. This paper is just gorgeous. It's gorgeous handmade paper from India, and I absolutely love it. And it's, I don't know, it seems to take all mediums. It's a really fun paper to use. Nothing sort of bleeds through, although I did find brushes did bleed through. That kind of ruined one of my favourite pages, but I managed to fix it, so it was all good. But in general, this paper literally takes anything and nothing goes through. It's amazing stuff, absolutely love it. Also, I was in the mood for some real mixed media-y type pages. It feels like it's a while since I've gone full-blown mixed media, and I was just needing it. I needed it to scratch an itch. So I've added texture paste, I've added this sort of rust and brown colours around the edges because I have the most amazing idea for this page. Do you ever have an idea that is so good in your head but then you find out in reality it doesn't quite translate? That was this page for me. So my amazing idea was that I was going to have these gorgeous sort of warm tones on the edges, and then I was going to have like a monochrome image in the centre where I would use those dark purples and greys and that little bit of lilac just to create a monochrome effect in the middle. So I stamped her out. I had to use that acrylic stamping block because I've lost my big acrylic block, which is just very sad. I'm going to have to get a new one. I suddenly realised the pencils wouldn't work either because they didn't work very well over texture paste. So I filled in her hair using watercolours, and then I pulled out my pencils, and the idea was to layer this up and build up some lovely deep shadows and create this monochrome image that would just pop. But the more I coloured, and the more I coloured, the worse she looked. I mean, the poor girl, she just looks ill, doesn't she? She looks like she's got pleurisy or something and she's on death's door. I mean, she's a lovely image. Erica's an amazing artist, but I've not done her any justice here whatsoever. So in desperately, there's my head again, sorry. In desperately trying to fix it, I pulled out my black acrylic marker, tried to like fill in the hair, make her eyes stand out a bit more, her lips stand out a bit more. And yeah, sorry, far too much head, far too much follicles. And yeah, I was just really struggling to make this work. In the end, I decided I didn't like her looking almost dead. So I brought out some of the Jane Davenport pastels and tried to warm up her face a little bit so she didn't look quite so peaky and sick. But then I lost the lilac elements, so I took the lilac parts of the, took the lilac parts and just sort of did these little stroke things to try and include it, so I'd still represented all the colours. I desperately came in with some white highlights to try and fix it. It's okay. The page has turned out okay. It's not my favourite, but I can live with it. But I think I could have done this palette much better justice. So I think I might come back to this one again. Maybe not in this challenge because I do have quite a few cards still to come, but in some other form of creative play, I might pull this one out and try it again. It's okay. It's okay. I learned something from it. I learned that, you know, if you're going to have warm tones in the background, don't go for those sort of tones in the face. It makes you look ill. This one, oh my goodness, I was so inspired by this one. So not only do the cards come with the actual colour combos that you can match up with your paints and things, they also come with these gorgeous photos, and you can use those as inspiration as well. Like if you're an artist, paint that landscape if you really want to. So I was really inspired by the actual picture, and especially the cloud formation and the clouds being pink. So I pulled out my pastels because they're my new obsession. Look, once I swatched them, I even marked them with acrylic markers to make sure that I would dip into the right pastels throughout this process. So I had the card in front of me and I was looking at it, and I was looking at the cloud formation, and I gradually built that up using pastels and a putty eraser to kind of erase away the gorgeous clouds. I then got the colours for these gorgeous sort of teal-y colours and put that on the base of this project, and also just sort of behind the house a little bit, just to give a little bit of shadowing. At this point it looks kind of rough because we need the details filled in, and I decided to fill in the main image using my Prismacolor pencils. So I do now start to sort of do an underpainting or a basting layer. A lot of colourists do that, a lot of artists do that. I don't know why we sort of missed that in the crafting community, but it's definitely worth doing. So I kind of gave it that sort of lilac layer. It also gives it just the right colour and undertones to match the rest of the painting despite what you put on top of it, which I think works really well. What I think is really interesting about this, I have coloured this image so many times. This is part of my Enchanted Forest stamp collection. Sorry, just slurring my words there. I was only having tea, I promise. This is part of my Enchanted Forest craft stamp collection, and I've coloured this so many times and lots of different colours, but I love these sort of purplies and burgundies. I've not got a brown in there at all. It's all purples and burgundies and kind of like a soft pink, and yet we've almost still got a tonality that looks like it's wood, which is really, really amazing. I love how it's actually turned out, and so it's probably, again, colours and pencils that I wouldn't have picked out for this particular image, but I am absolutely loving the results. Building up the textures, even having like pink mushrooms, this palette is almost monochromatic apart from that pop of teal, which is really fun. I really like it, and I love how it has kind of turned out. I then sort of added some white highlights and immediately regretted it because I just thought it ruined it. It was looking so good and it didn't look right. But if you ever do that and you don't like how it's looking, grab an alcohol marker in a similar colourway and just paint over them. It just helps to knock them back, so you still have a highlight but it's not that bright white. I love how this worked out. I think it looks really ethereal and magical, and I'm delighted with this one. So this was number 3. And then finally for today's video we are moving to number 4, and although we have a gorgeous sandscape there, the colours reminded me very much of patina, so I wanted to go down some form of steampunk route, although I really didn't have an idea in my head. I just knew I wanted to do patina. I wished I had an idea in my head, because this again was one of these ones. I like what we got in the end, but it took us a while to get there because I really didn't know what I was doing. But I was just in the moment, enjoying the process. And with pages like this, you just have to enjoy the process, and you just have to like each layer as you do it, because it gets covered and that's just part of it. So I stamped out some of again, this is one of my stamps, Innovation. Stamped it out multiple times, coloured it with acrylic markers, and as the acrylic markers went over each other they sort of got almost a little bit contaminated, but I just used those contaminated things and it gave a lot of variant and gradient. Now this decision here was a decision based on the fact I didn't know what I was doing next, and so just did something for the sake of doing something and then sort of regretted it. So we add circles of embossing powder. I've never even used this embossing powder before. Why that? I actually just saw it out of the corner of my eye and thought, oh, that would be cool, and just added it. I don't know why. But anyway, it's there, and I regretted that decision, but then suddenly remembered I had these steampunk papers. I put them next to the card and they matched, so I put them down, and then those circles were just really the wrong colour. They didn't match the card at all. Thankfully, alcohol markers go over absolutely everything, so I pulled out a couple of Copics and just knocked those back so that they were the colour they were supposed to be. And at this point I put clear gesso on everything because we had lots of layers, lots of mediums, and I really wanted to be able to build up shadowing and for it not to be moving what was happening underneath. So I mixed a blue colour that matched the palette and did a bit of shadowing. I felt like we didn't have enough teal in the story, so we added a little bit of that, just did some random distressed strokes. Then because it was seahorse, I thought bubbles would be cool because it's under the sea, so I added a few circles in the teal colour as well, and once I had them down I also just added a little bit of white into the bubbles as well, so they look a bit 3D, and also that really helps with the patina look, a splash of white. I finish off with some white splashes. Oh no, I don't, they're blue splashes. I finish off with that, and that is number 4 all done. So today we started with some journal play, just playing with stencils and things, using inspiration from card number 1 of the 2nd edition colour cube. We did some mixed media journaling, playing with texture paste and various mediums for card number 2. We created a gorgeous whimsical landscape using card number 3, and we went steampunk with card number 4. Thank you so much for joining me today. I love this page. I think this is my favourite of the day, and this is why I like to challenge myself, because this is gorgeous. I don't think I would have made this without the colour cube, without that little prompt in that direction. So I'm really, really excited. If you want to see previous episodes, you can check that out just now. And I will be back next week with some more crafty goodness. Take care and goodbye.